Can you believe it? 3 HOA board members charging at me like a SWAT team, all because I'm holding a fishing rod. I'm Dean, and I was that guy, just trying to enjoy a peaceful moment. 1 second. I'm savoring my black coffee by the lake behind my cozy cabin, the loon's haunting calls echoing across the water, filling my soul with calm. The next, a trio of self-righteous suburban tyrants screeches up in a golf cart, acting like they've caught me running a meth lab. Can you imagine the nerve? The ringleader, a bleach blonde woman named Karen, with her wraparound sunglasses and a laminated clipboard clutched like a royal scepter, points at me like I've committed high treason. Sir, you're in violation of HOA Code 7B5, unauthorized recreational angling, she barks. I nearly dropped my pole from laughing so hard. That's when it hit me. These people weren't just irritating, they were dangerous. Drunk on the kind of power only petty volunteers can wield. Oh, they had no clue who they were messing with. It was a serene Sunday morning, the kind that makes you feel alive. The sky was a brilliant blue, the water calm, lapping gently against my dock. I had my usual setup, a creaky fold-out chair, my dad's weathered tackle box full of memories, and a steaming cup of gas station coffee that, somehow, always tasted like heaven outdoors. Fishing? It wasn't just a pastime. For me, it was my sanctuary, my church, my therapy. That lake had been part of my life since I bought this cabin a decade ago. Ownership? Privilege? Never crossed my mind it was just my life, until Karen and her posse decided to rewrite the rules. The golf cart's tires crunched arrogantly on the gravel path, oozing fake authority. Karen, who I'd seen yelling at kids for daring to ride scooters too fast, had apparently crowned herself the sheriff of aquatic justice. Flanking her were 2 other HOA board members, a guy who never took off his socks with sandals seriously. Who does that? And a woman who once filed a noise complaint against a wind chime. A wind chime. Together, they look like the most pathetic Avengers reboot you could ever imagine. Karen dismounted the cart like she was stepping off a golden chariot, flipped open her clipboard with a flourish, and pointed dramatically at my fishing rod. "Do you have a valid HOA fishing tag?" she demanded. I blinked, dumbfounded. Didn't know I needed one to sit on my own dock. I shot back. "It's not your dock," she sniffed, her nose practically in the air. "That lake is community property, and the board recently passed a resolution requiring a fishing permit for wildlife protection." Wildlife protection? I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. "Lady, the only wildlife I've seen in this lake are a few frogs, 3 ducks, and a catfish that limps." She ignored my jab and slapped a yellow notice against my chest. "You've been cited. $600 fine. Further violations will result in legal action." I couldn't hold it in. I laughed, not just a chuckle, but a deep, belly-shaking roar that echoed across the lake. "This can't be real, right?" Karen looked downright offended, her face twisting like I'd insulted her very existence. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "I think it's absurd," I replied, folding my chair and standing tall. "I've been fishing here for 10 years. This isn't some clubhouse pool, it's a lake. Who even owns it?" "The HOA manages this land," she said, her voice dripping with smugness, "which means it falls under our rules." That night, I got home to find a garish orange warning taped to my front door, like I'd been caught running a drug cartel in the woods. The letter threatened escalating fines, legal action, and even suspension of my community privileges. Privileges? Ha! I stared at it, my blood simmering, then crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. I wasn't angry, not yet, but oh, was I curious. What kind of power trip was this? The next morning, I woke to find new signs sprouting like weeds around the lake. Big, bold letters screamed, "Fishing prohibited. Violators will be fined." One was planted right next to my dock, another by the tree line where I parked my canoe. My heart sank, but I took a deep breath, marched inside, and made a call I hadn't made in years. My lawyer, Barry, an old college buddy who usually helped with business filings, picked up on the second ring. "Dean, if this is about the time I told your ex she could keep the dog, I'm still sorry," he joked. "Not that," I said, my voice steady. "I need you to dig into something. The lake behind my cabin, who really owns it?" A pause. "You thinking lawsuit?" "Not exactly," I replied, a spark igniting in my chest. "I'm thinking checkbook." By Tuesday, Barry had news that blew my mind. The lake wasn't HOA property. Can you believe it? It was part of a land deal from 30 years ago, back when the neighborhood was just dirt lots and dreams. The lake had been leased to the developer for community use, but the purchase option was never finalized. The holding company that held the deed had gone dormant. The land was up for grabs. "They think they own the lake," Barry said, "but nobody ever bought it." I leaned back in my chair, a grin spreading across my face. "What would it take to buy it now?" I asked, my heart racing. "Find the successor to the holding company and make an offer," he said. "It's doable. And with their sloppy documentation, I bet no one else even knows it's available." For the first time in forever, I felt a rush of excitement. Fishing had always been my escape, my slice of peace, but now it was about principle. The HOA thought they could bully anyone with their fines and intimidation, but they didn't count on me, a guy with patience, some cash, and a lawyer who knew his stuff. They were about to get schooled. 2 days later, the paperwork was in motion. I played it cool, acting clueless when Karen zipped by in her golf cart, scowling like I'd stolen her crown. She even waved once. All smug and superior, little did she know I was signing the first draft of a property acquisition proposal. Barry called it a surgical strike. I called it pure poetry. A week later, I stood on my dock, rod in hand, the sun warming my back, staring at their fishing prohibited sign. I grinned. They wanted to play territorial? Oh, they picked the wrong fisherman. In 2 weeks, I wouldn't just be fishing, I'd own this lake, and their flimsy rules would sink faster than a cinder block in a storm. The thrill of knowing I was about to flip the HOA's fake empire upside down, better than any fish I could have reeled in, while Barry worked his legal magic. I kept my head down, waving at neighbors, even showing up at the next HOA meeting just to watch. Karen sat at the head of the community center table, her smug face glowing with fake authority as she read off new lake rules, kayak sticker registration, approved shoreline hours, and get this, a dress code for the lake. A dress code? I nearly choked on the free punch. But the kicker? Not one word about who actually owned the lake. They assumed it was theirs, that some long-forgotten paperwork secured their claim. Karen was so obsessed with control. She never questioned her power's foundation. She thought her clipboard made her queen. Meanwhile, Barry had sealed the deal. The dormant holding company belonged to an elderly Florida couple who were shocked anyone wanted their worthless wetlands. Barry's cash offer was a no-brainer, and within days we had signatures. When I held that deed in my hands, something shifted inside me. It was like standing on solid ground after a hurricane. No more pretending, no more begging for permission. I owned the lake, shoreline to shoreline, including the 10-foot buffer zone, where the HOA had stuck their snarky signs and kayak rack. Guess what? They were now trespassing on my land. Oh, I couldn't wait to break the news. But I didn't go loud right away, that'd be too easy. Instead, I called a local sign company and ordered 12 massive, handcrafted wooden signs. their rustic lettering bold and unyielding. These weren't just signs, they were battle flags. Each one declared, "Private property, no trespassing, residents not welcome. Violators will be prosecuted." I chose a stained wood finish, almost artistic, to make them both charming and terrifying. Then I hired a crew from the next town strangers to the HOA to plant them around the lake at dawn. By 8 a.m., the neighborhood group chat was ablaze. Photos of my signs flooded in, residents panicking, tagging Karen, demanding answers. I sat on my porch, sipping fresh coffee, watching the chaos like it was a blockbuster movie. Around 9, Karen's golf cart whined down the road, heading straight for the lake. Her voice carried over the water. "What is this? Who authorized this? Dean doesn't own this." "Oh, but I did." I strolled down, a folder in hand, letting the silence build until she saw me. She spun, finger raised, ready to pounce. "Dean, you can't just—" I cut her off, opening the folder to reveal the deed, stamped and finalized. Her mouth snapped shut. "I don't need to just do anything," I said, calm as the lake itself. "This land, this lake, it's mine. Legally purchased, officially documented. The HOA never owned it. The previous owner sold it to me. These signs, legally enforceable. And you're on my property." Her face turned redder than a summer sunset, her eyes wide like she'd been slapped by a fish. "That's impossible," she stammered. "We've used this lake for years. Using and owning are two different things," I said. "You assumed it was yours. Nobody checked the paperwork until I did." She tried to pivot. "We'll call the city. Seize it. It's a public interest matter," I laughed, shaking my head. "Eminent domain? For a lake? The city won't touch this just because your board's got an ego problem." Her voice cracked. "You can't ban people. The community will be furious." I leaned in, grinning. "Oh, I'm counting on it." That's the best part. By noon, curious residents gathered, some angry, some stunned. I explained, calm and clear. "You've been lied to. This lake was never HOA property. I found the loophole. And now, due to their harassment, I'm restricting access." "It's just policy like the HOAs." Karen stormed to the clubhouse, calling an emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, but word got back. She wanted to sue me for community theft and declare the lake neighborhood domain. It all fell apart, especially after Barry sent a cease and desist letter with deed copies, warning of defamation claims. Her buddy Rick tried to play tough, marching to the lake with a fishing pole, daring me to stop him. I called the sheriff, handed over the deed, and Rick got a trespassing warning. Talk about a costly lesson. The HOA was crumbling, and Karen's grip was slipping. The community split, some called me a hero, others mourned their lake days. But this wasn't about popularity, it was about principle. And oh, I wasn't done. What Karen didn't know was my next move would make those signs look like child's play. I wasn't just keeping the lake, I was turning it into a business. One the HOA couldn't touch. Stay tuned, because this story's about to get even wilder. Oh, can you picture it? My heart raced as I watched those 12 massive wooden signs go up, each one screaming, "Private property, no trespassing, residents not welcome, violators will be prosecuted." I chose a stained wood finish, almost like fine art, making them both charming and downright intimidating. Why settle for subtle when you can make a statement? I hired a crew from the next town, over total strangers, to the HOA's prying eyes, to plant those signs around my lake's perimeter at dawn. The thrill of it all. I was staking my claim, and nobody could stop me. By 8 a.m., the neighborhood group chat exploded. Photos of my signs flooded in. Residents panicking, confused, frantically tagging Karen, begging for answers. I sat on my porch, cradling a fresh cup of coffee, grinning like I was watching the best reality show ever. The chaos unfolded like morning television, and I was here for it. Around 9, the unmistakable whine of Karen's golf cart tore down the road, her fury practically vibrating through the air. Oh, she was mad. She didn't even glance at my house. She beelined for the lake, where 2 of my signs stood tall near the community kayak launch. Her voice echoed across the water, shrill and indignant. What is this? Who authorized this? Who does Dean think he is to put up signs? He doesn't own this. Oh, but I did. I strolled down to meet her, a folder tucked under my arm, letting the silence build like a storm. When I was close enough, she saw the folder, and her eyes narrowed. Game on. Karen spun toward me, her finger already raised like a weapon, ready to accuse. Dean, you can't just... I cut her off, flipping open the folder to reveal the deeds stamped, recorded, finalized. Her mouth snapped shut like a trap. I don't need to just do anything, I said, calm as the lake on a still morning. This land, this lake, it's mine. Legally purchased, officially documented. The HOA never owned it. The previous owner sold it to me. These signs, they're legally enforceable. And you, Karen, are standing on my private property. Can you imagine the look on her face? She blinked like she'd been slapped by a fish, her whole world crumbling. That's impossible, she stammered, her voice trembling. We've used this lake for years. I leaned in, my voice steady but firm. Using something and owning something are 2 very different things. You've been operating under the false assumption that it was HOA managed. Guess what? Nobody bothered to check the paperwork until I did. Her face flushed redder than a summer sunburn, her carefully constructed authority unraveling before my eyes. Oh, it was glorious. She tried to pivot, desperation creeping in. Fine, then we'll call the city and seize it. This is a public interest matter. I couldn't help but laugh, shaking my head. Eminent domain? For a lake? The city's not going to steal my property just because your board's got an ego the size of Texas. Her voice cracked, her composure slipping. You can't just ban people. You'll have the entire community furious. I leaned closer, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. Oh, I know. That's the best part. Why should I make it easy for them after all they'd done? By noon, small crowds of residents gathered around the signs, some fuming, others just stunned, their jaws practically on the ground. I let them approach me one by one, explaining everything with a calm, rational tone that belied the fire in my chest. You've been lied to, I told them. This lake was never HOA property. I found the legal loophole before anyone else did. Now, because of their relentless harassment, I've restricted access. It's not personal, it's just policy. The same kind of policy the HOA loves to shove down your throats. The truth hit them hard, and I could see the gears turning in their minds. Karen, meanwhile, stormed back to the clubhouse, her ego bruised but her fight far from over. She called an emergency board meeting without inviting me. Of course. But the grapevine was buzzing, and I heard it all. She demanded an injunction, wanted to sue me for community theft, and even proposed a resolution to declare the lake neighborhood domain. Can you believe the audacity? It all crashed and burned, especially after my lawyer, Barry, sent a cease and desist letter to the entire board, complete with copies of the deed and a polite warning that slander would lead to defamation claims. Take that, Karen. Her loyal sidekick, Rick, tried to play tough guy the next morning. He marched to the lake's edge, fishing pole in hand, daring me to stop him. Did he really think I'd back down? I called the sheriff's office, handed over a copy of the deed, and watched as Rick got slapped with a trespassing warning. Talk about an expensive lesson in respecting boundaries. The HOA's cracks were widening, and Karen's grip was slipping faster than a fish off a hook. The community was split. Some hailed me as a genius. Others mourned their lost lake days. But popularity? That wasn't my goal. This was about principle, pure and simple. And oh, the best was yet to come. What Karen and her HOA cronies didn't know was that my next move would make those wooden signs look like child's play. I wasn't just keeping the lake. I was going to monetize it, turn it into something they could never touch. The day after Rick's trespassing fiasco, the HOA's meltdown hit fever pitch. It was like Karen had lit a fuse under her own leadership, and now the board was scrambling like headless chickens in their khaki pants and branded polos. I heard they held a secret emergency session in the clubhouse, where Karen stood up, pounded her gavel, and declared war, actual war. "We are under siege," she cried, her voice trembling with righteous fury. "This is an invasion of our lifestyle, and I will not back down." An invasion? Really, Karen? It was about her ego, her desperate need to reclaim her imagined throne. But her troops? They weren't exactly rallying behind her. Word of the truth spread like wildfire. My signed deed, the HOA's decades-long oversight, Barry's scathing cease and desist letter. People started realizing Karen had built her empire on assumptions, not facts. Their summer dreams, kayaking, paddleboarding, floating on giant flamingo inflatables, were vanishing faster than morning mist off the lake. The community was locked out of its crown jewel. And guess who they were blaming? Not me, Karen. I wasn't popping champagne yet, though the fallout was too juicy to miss. Karen, stubborn as ever, thought she could bully me into submission with public pressure. She launched a campaign called Reclaim Our Lake, complete with flyers, a printed newsletter, and a Facebook group where she spewed rants about irresponsible land hoarding and betrayal of neighborly trust. I read it all, sipping coffee from a mug that said, "World's Most Hated Angler," chuckling at her desperation. But then, things took a dark turn. Sabotage. One morning, I found my canoe's ropes sliced clean through. Nothing floated away, but the message was clear. The next night, someone dumped a stench like rotten eggs all over my cabin's welcome mat. A week later, I discovered sugar in my fishing boat's gas tank. That wasn't just petty, it was dangerous. I had to drain and clean the entire engine to save it. My blood boiled. That's when I installed cameras. Barry and I had a long talk. I hated involving law enforcement. But this had gone too far. "Keep records, timestamp everything," he advised. Let the HOA dig their own grave. He was right. 2 nights later, my security footage caught a familiar figure skulking near my boathouse. Rick, hoodie up, flashlight in one hand, bolt cutters in the other. He was slashing my secondary dock line when I hit the alarm from my phone. The high-pitched wail shattered the lake's peace, and Rick bolted, tripping over rocks like a teenager caught toilet papering the wrong house. I didn't chase him. I didn't need to. The sheriff had the footage within the hour. The next day, Rick was served a misdemeanor citation. His HOA pals tried to spin it as inspecting storm damage. Nobody bought it. I printed screenshots from the security cam and hand-delivered them to every mailbox in the community, scribbling on the back, "Private property means private rules. Respect the line or pay the fine." That flyer went viral on our town's Nextdoor app within hours. The comments section erupted, with neighbors debating whether the HOA had lost it or if I'd gone too far. But something shifted. People weren't mad at me anymore. They were furious at Karen and her board. Oh, the sweet taste of justice. Karen's empire was crumbling, and I was just getting started. My lake wasn't just a victory, it was about to become a legacy, one the HOA could never reclaim. What did I have planned next? Let's just say it would make those signs look like a warm-up act. Oh, can you believe the desperation? Karen, clinging to her fading power, organized a lake rights awareness march on a sunny Saturday morning, as if she could bully her way back to control. She rallied a ragtag group of loyalists, mostly retired board members, and her weekly book club marching down the road with homemade signs shouting water for all and no tyrants on the shore. Can you picture it? Their self-righteous parade, thinking they'd reclaim the lake with sheer audacity. But when they reached the lake's edge, they were stopped dead in their tracks by 2 uniformed deputies and a printed copy of my trespass policy stapled boldly to a post. I wasn't even there. I was in town, picking up supplies for the next phase of my master plan, but oh, the satisfaction. Someone snapped a photo of Karen, her face twisted in defeat, turned away from the lake she once called the heart of our community. That image? It went viral, an instant meme that had the whole town laughing. The next week, Karen, refusing to admit defeat, called a full HOA meeting, promising a vote to override the board and drag me into court. Did she really think she could win? She hadn't counted on how fractured her precious board had become. Half of them were already abandoning her, slinking away from her sinking ship, while the rest were just exhausted from looking like fools when she stood up, all dramatic, and pitched her plan to hire an attorney and sue me for public use obstruction. The room fell silent. Not a single person seconded her motion. Can you imagine the humiliation? The silence was deafening, her authority crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. Then came the bombshell that shook the room. Mr. Phelps, an older resident, quiet and soft-spoken, always sporting the same worn fishing hat, stood up and cleared his throat. Karen, he said, his voice steady but piercing, you told us this lake was HOA property. You told us Dean was breaking rules. Turns out, none of that was true. And now you're costing this neighborhood more than we can afford financially and otherwise. I think it's time someone else ran this place. The room froze. Karen blinked, her gavel tapping nervously against the table, but not one soul came to her defense. Her reign was over, and oh, how it stung her. Later that evening, as the moonlight danced on the lake, I got a knock on my door. It was Marcia, a board member who'd always played it safe, standing there with a cupcake topped with blue frosting and a sheepish grin. Don't ask why, she said, her eyes twinkling. Just congratulations. Also, Karen's resigning effective next week. I took the cupcake, closed the door, and stepped onto my porch, the cool night air wrapping around me. The lake sparkled under the stars, and for a moment, peace settled in. But I knew Karen too well. She wasn't the type to slink away quietly. She was plotting something, scheming in the shadows. Did she think I'd let my guard down? Not a chance. I was already 3 steps ahead. While Karen was wasting her energy on marches and Facebook rants, I was building something unstoppable, something that would make my lake not just legally mine, but economically untouchable. This wasn't about the HOA losing a lake. It was about creating one they could never reclaim. The dust from Karen's resignation hadn't even settled when I launched the next phase of my plan. Owning the lake was thrilling, no doubt. But I wasn't in this for petty revenge. I wanted something lasting, something that would outlive the HOA's revolving door of power-hungry board members and their thirst for control. If they couldn't respect private ownership, they'd learn to respect private enterprise. I wasn't about to sit on my lake like some grumpy hermit, nursing a grudge. Oh no, I was turning it into a thriving, Members-only business that welcomed everyone except the very people who tried to run me off my own water. I named it Lake Liberty, and let me tell you, that name wasn't just branding, it was a battle cry, a declaration of freedom. I filed for the business license, built a sleek, user-friendly website, and teamed up with a local contractor named Vince to transform the shoreline. Together, we designed a modest but charming dockside lodge, nothing flashy, just a sturdy two-room building with a rental booth, a storage shed, and a cozy patio lined with rocking chairs that overlooked the shimmering water. Can you imagine a better spot to unwind? We installed an electronic gate and a sturdy fence along the main access trail, leaving just one road open for guests. The signs got a bold upgrade too. Now they proclaimed, Lake Liberty Private Club, membership required. HOA residents excluded by policy. Oh, I knew that last line would set Karen's blood boiling, and that's what made it perfect. This wasn't just about running a club. It was about drawing a line in the sand, or rather, the shoreline. I wasn't banning people for no reason. I was shutting out a group that had shown nothing but entitlement and hostility, and this time, the law was 100% on my side. How sweet it felt. Within a week of the website going live, membership applications poured in. Families from nearby neighborhoods, veterans, fishermen, paddleboarders, even a few travel bloggers, everyone wanted in. I kept the pricing fair. An annual membership that covered maintenance, access, and basic rentals. I threw in discounted day passes for seniors and free fishing permits for veterans and first responders because why not give back to those who deserve it? The local buzz grew louder every day, and by the end of the month, we had 50 members and a waiting list. My lake had become a hidden gem, a paradise that was Karen's worst nightmare. Did she think she could compete with this? Of course. Karen didn't stay silent for long. Even after resigning, she lived just down the street. And word was, she was fuming every time she passed my residence. Not welcome sign. I could almost hear her grinding her teeth. Then came the inevitable showdown. One scorching afternoon, I was restocking fishing lures in the lodge when a commotion erupted at the gate. Karen had shown up, decked out in full summer gear, sun hat, visor, a bright pink water bottle demanding entry like she still ruled the place. My employees, Hal, a retired Coast Guard veteran with a no-nonsense vibe, and Mia, a sharp college student, stood firm, blocking her path. Oh, the drama. I stepped outside, waving casually. "Can I help you, Karen?" I asked, my voice dripping with amusement. Her voice shot up like a kettle about to explode. "This is a disgrace, Dean. I demand access to the lake. You may have tricked some paper pushers into giving you a deed, but you can't ban people based on residency. That's discrimination." I pointed to the massive sign beside her. "It's a private club, Karen. Just like your HOA pool was a private amenity. You restricted my access for years now. The shoe's on the other foot." She crossed her arms, her face a mask of fury. "You're going to get sued." I held up a laminated copy of the membership policy, cool as a cucumber. "All legal, all compliant. Want me to read you the trespass laws again?" She glared at me, her eyes practically shooting flames. "Enjoy your little lake," she spat. "It won't last." Then she stormed off, knocking over a rack of brochures in a huff. I watched her go, a mix of amusement and pity swirling in my chest. She still thought she could win a fight she'd already lost. But the community was shifting fast, and she was out of moves. With Karen gone, the new HOA president, a level-headed guy named Leonard, stepped in to rebuild trust. One evening, he approached me with a handshake and a sincere apology. "We got caught up in the wrong fight," he said, his voice earnest. "Most folks just want to move on." I respected his honesty, but I wasn't about to soften my rules. Leonard got it. Can't say I'd do it differently in your shoes, he admitted. But could we maybe work out a limited partnership? Like a neighborhood day once a year? Something symbolic? I thought it over, then nodded. Maybe. Let's see how the summer goes. Word of our chat spread. And suddenly, I wasn't the neighborhood villain anymore. People started waving again, some even stopping by the fence to ask about memberships for friends or family. Meanwhile, Lake Liberty was booming. We hosted our first Freedom Fest on the 4th of July, complete with live music, sizzling barbecue, and thrilling kayak races. Over 300 visitors flooded in, and we raised nearly $2,000 for a local veterans charity. The news ran a segment, the headline blaring, "Man reclaims lake from HOA, turns it into private paradise." My inbox exploded with messages from across the country, people in HOA neighborhoods sharing tales of petty fines, landscaping wars, and nosy board members. One guy sent a photo of his unauthorized bird bath that earned him a citation. Another was fined for hanging his American flag crooked. Can you believe how widespread this nonsense is? Lake Liberty wasn't just my victory, it was a symbol of standing up to overreach. And I was just getting started. Karen's defeat was complete, but the story of my lake? It was only beginning to ripple. Can you feel the weight of it? Lake Liberty wasn't just a project anymore. It was a blazing symbol of defiance, a beacon of freedom against petty tyranny. Oh, the joy of knowing that while the whole town buzzed with excitement, the only ones sulking were Karen and her dwindling inner circle. I heard she was scrambling, trying to cobble together a residents' coalition to pressure the new HOA board into challenging me again. Can you believe her nerve? But nobody was biting. The louder she screamed, the more she pushed people away, her voice echoing into a void. Her once loyal allies? They'd either packed up and left, or turned their backs on her completely. Karen, dethroned, exiled, and locked out of the very lake she used to rule like a queen. How's that for justice? One crisp evening, I stood by the fire pit near the lodge, the orange glow dancing across the water like a living painting. My heart swelled as I reflected on how fast everything had flipped. Just a year ago, I was a guy craving the simple peace of fishing on my dock. Now, I was a club owner, a community hero, and can you imagine the unintentional face of resistance against HOA overreach? I never set out to be a rebel, but when someone shoves you hard enough, what choice do you have but to push back harder? And oh, I wasn't done yet. I had one final surprise up my sleeve, something Karen would never see coming, something to cement that Lake Liberty wasn't just off limits, it was untouchable. The morning I raised that final sign was serene, almost sacred, as if the lake itself held its breath. No fanfare, no press, just me, a cordless drill, and a masterpiece of a sign that took weeks to design, carve, and perfect. I planted it right at the center dock, where Karen and her HOA cronies used to launch their paddle boats, strutting like monarchs of a plastic empire. The sign declared, "Private Lake Club, members only, HOA officials, permanently banned. Enjoy the view from afar." Stained dark oak, gleaming brass trim, and a carved base leaping over the words like a triumphant flourish. Oh, it was perfection. I stepped back, my chest swelling with pride as the early sunlight shimmered on the water. This was my victory, etched in wood and water. That day, life at Lake Liberty hummed along as usual. Visitors checked in at the lodge, their laughter filling the air. A family unloaded kayaks from a roof rack, their kids squealing with excitement. Two veterans from the local American Legion chapter rolled up, folding chairs and fishing rods in tow, ready for a day of peace. Real peace. The kind that didn't demand compromise or groveling to petty rules. The lodge had become so much more than a business, it was a sanctuary, A vibrant ecosystem where people cherished the land, followed fair rules, and left the place better than they found it. I hired local teens for summer jobs, their energy lighting up the place, and kept discounts flowing for first responders and teachers. For everyone else, the rates were fair, the vibe welcoming everyone. That is, except the HOA bullies, who thought they could run this lake like their personal fiefdom. Tough luck, Karen. Speaking of Karen, she hadn't been spotted near the lake in weeks, but her name still floated around like a ghost story. Neighbors whispered about her like she was a comic book villain once feared, now just a sad, faded memory. Rumor had it she tried starting a rival nature club at a nearby retention pond. A retention pond? Can you imagine? It collapsed after she got into a shouting match with a city worker over mosquito fogging. Her reputation? Shot to pieces. Her influence? Withered like a weed in winter. What she never grasped, until it was far too late, was that her power never came from rules, signs, or meetings. It came from people choosing to follow her the second they stopped. She was just another clipboard-wielding grump with a bad attitude. The HOA itself had undergone a quiet revolution. Leonard, the new president, was a breath of fresh air, focusing on community gardens and fixing potholes instead of micromanaging lawn gnomes or mailbox colors. One afternoon, he stopped by the lake, not to negotiate, but just to visit. He strolled along the edge, read my signs, and gave me a small nod as he passed. No words, no drama, just a silent understanding between two men who'd seen what unchecked power could do to a neighborhood. That moment, it felt like closure, a quiet victory in itself. But the real finale of this saga came with the town's annual Community Showcase Day, a quirky tradition where businesses, parks, and clubs set up booths to show off their offerings. Lake Liberty was invited for the first time, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Still, I dove in, setting up a simple table decked out with glossy photos of the lake, colorful brochures, a small tackle display, and a banner that read, "Two fish." Nothing over the top, just a raffle for a free weekend pass and a sign-up sheet for next season's memberships. Then, like clockwork, Karen showed up. I spotted her across the lot, trying to blend in with a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses. But her tense, twitchy posture gave her away. She wandered through the booths, chatting with folks, clearly fishing for anyone to bring up the lake. Nobody did. Oh, the irony. Eventually, she slunk over to my table, eyeing the display like a food critic, judging a greasy burger. "I heard your club's doing well," she said, her voice icy as she flipped through a brochure, pretending to care. "Better than expected," I replied, my grin wide. "We had to add a wait list last month." She let out a half laugh, the kind that screams she's dying inside but too proud to show it. "Must be exhausting," she sneered, "managing people, rules, upkeep, paperwork." I leaned on the table, my smile unshakable. "You'd be surprised how smoothly things run when the rules make sense and people actually want to follow them." Her jaw tightened, her facade cracking. "You know, I never meant for it to get this far," she said, her voice softer now. "It was just about protecting community standards." I dropped the pleasantries, my tone firm. "Karen, you tried to find me for fishing on land I'd maintained for a decade. You taped threats to my door, rallied a mob, and let someone vandalize my property, all because I didn't buy your fake fishing permit." She stared at me, her eyes flickering with something regret, maybe, before looking away. "That lake was part of our identity," she murmured. "Maybe," I shot back, "but you treated it like your throne." Silence hung heavy between us. Then, without a word, she grabbed a raffle card, scribbled something on the back, and walked away. Later, I flipped it over. 2 words, "You win." I didn't keep the card, I didn't need to. The entire lake, sparkling under the sun, was proof enough of my triumph. The showcase wrapped up with our booth snagging second place for the most popular local feature, just behind the town bakery. Not too shabby, right? That night, I headed home, poured a cold drink, and wandered down to the dock. The sky was a soft, golden masterpiece, the kind of sunset that washes away every ounce of nonsense you've endured. I sat down, cast a line, and let the quiet wrap around me like a warm blanket. No more HOA drama, no shouting, no politics, just me, the water, and a lake that was finally, irrevocably mine. Lake Liberty stood tall, not as a monument to revenge, but as a sanctuary forged from persistence, principle, and maybe a touch of well-earned pettiness. But it was measured, channeled into something enduring, something beautiful. As I sat there, a few kids zoomed by on bikes, their laughter cutting through the evening calm. One of them shouted, "Hey, Mr. Dean, you really own a whole lake?" I chuckled, my heart light. "Yup, all of it." They pedaled off, disappearing down the road, and I leaned back, a grin spreading across my face. I never planned to own a lake, honestly. I just wanted to fish in peace. But sometimes, when bullies try to shove you out of the water, the best response is to buy the whole darn thing and build a pier that screams, "No bullies allowed." Lake Liberty wasn't just a place, it was my legacy, a testament to standing firm, and oh, what a sweet victory it was.